Welcome to this explainer. So, have you ever caught yourself wondering if all those ancient myths we grew up hearing about are actually, well, primitive eyewitness accounts of advanced extraterrestrial technology? Today, we're diving deep into the alien technology behind mythology. It's a wildly compelling theory, honestly. We're going to look at the stories our ancestors left behind and see how they map perfectly onto the cutting-edge science of our modern world. It completely flips history on its head, and we have a ton of ground to cover, so let's get into it. Okay, so here's the core premise from ancient astronaut theorists. What if early humans were literally just trying to describe high-tech machines, but they completely lacked the vocabulary to do it? Think about it. When they saw advanced engineering, they just called it magic. When they saw beings wielding this crazy tech, they called them gods. It's an incredible lens for rereading ancient texts from cultures all over the globe. Just to set our baseline here, let's look way back to ancient Sumeria, right around 3800 BC. In their texts, we find these vivid visual descriptions of beings called the Anunnaki. The name itself literally translates to those who from heaven come to earth. And what's really striking about this, they weren't described as some sort of invisible, ethereal spirits. No, they were described as physical beings, flesh and blood, that descended from the sky to live alongside humanity. Section 1. Ancient androids, robots of the past. Now, picture walking through ancient Greece. The 5th century BC poet Pindar actually wrote that the island of Rhodes was once covered with statues that came to life, bussing around like living, moving creatures. Theorists argue that if you take this legend at face value, it raises a massive, mind-bending question. Were these people actually describing autonomous machines? I mean, if a lifeless object suddenly starts performing tasks today, we wouldn't call it magic, we just call it a robot. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact parallels we're talking about. Take the Greek myth of Talos. This was a giant man made entirely of bronze who protected the island of Crete by releasing extreme heat to just incinerate approaching ships. When you put that legend side by side with modern tech, like NASA's Valkyrie, which is a super robot they're developing right now to build human habitats on other planets, the similarities are absolutely wild. Both are metallic, autonomous giants built for highly dangerous tasks. Though, hopefully NASA's version won't be incinerating any ships anytime soon. And the thing is, this wasn't just some isolated Greek phenomenon. We see these descriptions of human-like machines popping up concurrently all over the world. The Jewish Talmud talks about the golem, a clay figure brought to life by inserting a quote-unquote spell into its mouth, which sounds an awful lot like inserting code, right? Over in India, the 5th century BC Lokapanati describes spirit movement machines. And the ancient Chinese text, the Li Qi, straight up describes a fully functional humanoid robot. Let's actually zero in on that Chinese robot for a second. It was presented to King Mu about 3,000 years ago. The text says it could sing, it could move gracefully, but here is the kicker. When the king dismantled it, he found that removing the liver stopped it from walking, and removing the kidneys stopped it from seeing. Theorists are quick to point out that if this were a machine, removing specific internal components to stop localized functions sounds exactly, and I mean exactly, like pulling out dedicated battery packs. This whole concept of mechanized anatomy even extends over to the Egyptian god Osiris. So legend has it, Osiris was dismembered into 14 pieces by his brother Seth, and then meticulously reassembled and resurrected by Isis. Fast forward to today, and scientists at the University of Oslo are literally developing robots that can lose a limb, 3D print a new one on the spot, and effectively repair themselves. Plus, ancient texts describe Osiris's spine as the Jed pillar, which scholars have noticed looks strikingly like a modern-day Tesla coil. Could Osiris have actually been a self-repairing machine? Moving on to Section 2, Energy and Sonic Weapons, Ancient Warfare. Let's look across vastly different, completely separated cultures for a moment. Zeus wielded a city-destroying lightning bolt. Poseidon could summon massive tidal waves with his trident. Thor smashed literally everything in his path with a hammer. Ancient astronaut theorists argue that these aren't just mythological symbols. When you really read the descriptions, they sound like historical accounts of highly advanced, directed energy beam devices being deployed in warfare. Take the biblical fall of Jericho, for example. Joshua's army supposedly leveled these incredibly thick city walls using the Ark of the Covenant and the prolonged blowing of ram's horns. Now compare that to the modern LRAD, the long-range acoustic device. This thing emits concentrated 150 decibel blasts, which is enough to cause temporary blindness, intense nausea, and massive physical disruption. Makes you wonder, were the Israelites actually utilizing advanced sonic weaponry? And that same incredible acoustic technology might just explain one of South America's absolute greatest mysteries, Pumapunku in Peru. Local legends there insist that those massive, intricately carved granite and diorite blocks were never dragged by human hands. Instead, they were supposedly floated into place through the air by the sound of a trumpet, which, crazy enough, aligns perfectly with our modern experiments in acoustic levitation, where we literally use sound waves to move physical objects. The sheer precision of ancient construction really backs this up too. Just look at this number, 0.0002 inches. When modern engineers examine the obelisks at Karnak or the Ramses statue in Egypt, they're finding tolerances matching that exact measurement. Inside these tiny carved slots, they found the unmistakable marks of a rotating tool that punched in and stepped down. Experts argue there's just no way human hands with primitive copper chisels could achieve that. It strictly requires mechanized, powered equipment. All right, Section 3. Ancient aerospace. Gods in the sky. So the Greek gods famously lived on Mount Olympus, right? Ancient texts describe it as this magnificent palace with gleaming metallic walls. But critically, and a lot of people miss this, those same texts also describe the mountain loudly rumbling before its entire top lifted off the ground and flew into the sky. Ancient astronaut theorists hypothesized that, actually, this wasn't a mountain peak at all. It was a massive mothership taking off. And how exactly did these ancient beings gather global intelligence? Take the Norse god Odin, the chief deity of Asgard. He famously had two ravens, Hugin and Munin, which translates to thought and memory. Every single day, he sent them out across the globe, and they'd return to report everything they'd seen. Rather than magical birds, theorists argue Odin was simply deploying advanced spy drones, or maybe tapping into a satellite network to monitor the planet, basically exactly what modern militaries do today. We see similar technological leaps down in the oceans, too. Poseidon commanded this race called the Telchines. They were human-like beings, master metallurgists, and they could survive underwater indefinitely. Now, does that sound like a mythological monster, or does it sound remarkably like modern military divers using artificial gill technology? Because researchers are developing that exact tech today, allowing humans to extract oxygen directly from the surrounding water. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Becoming the Gods, Our Technological Path. Back in the 1940s, the mathematician John von Neumann theorized self-replicating space probes. The idea is you send one machine out into space, it harvests raw materials, builds a perfect copy of itself, and then the process repeats exponentially so you can explore the entire cosmos. Theorists have noticed this aligns perfectly with ancient Egyptian traditions that actually speak of formless light beings emerging from an island of the egg to manifest life and build civilization on Earth using imported genetics. And honestly, just look at our own timeline right now. Over at UCLA, Dr. Veronica Santos is developing tactile robotic fingers that can actually feel pressure and deform, just like human skin. NASA has already sent Robonaut 2 to work on the International Space Station, and as we speak, we are exploring the Endeavour crater on Mars using autonomous remote-controlled rovers. Our current technological trajectory is rapidly, and I mean rapidly, catching up to the capabilities that were once reserved only for the quote-unquote gods. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. As we master self-repairing robotics, directed energy weapons, global spy drones, and interstellar space travel, are we currently building the very alien technology described in the mythology of our past? Are we, right at this very moment, simply becoming the extraterrestrial gods our ancestors witnessed? It's an absolutely thrilling question to ponder. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning everything you know.